Have you ever had one small setback that spiraled into a full-blown disaster in your mind? It usually starts with one, usually insignificant, random thought, and then before you know it, you've imagined the absolute worst case scenario, and your mood, your focus, and your day is suddenly hijacked. I'm Mike Blissett, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing a simple 3-step method that you can use to break that cycle of overthinking and get back in control of your day when it happens before your mind runs away with you. This is part of my One Thing I'm Learning About series, where I share what's helping me in real time in the hope that it might help you too. So let's jump in. A couple of weeks ago, I sent a client an email. Now, there is nothing wrong, nothing unusual, nothing weird about that. Until a few minutes after I'd sent it, I realized I'd attached the wrong file, the wrong attachment. Now, there wasn't a breach of any confidentiality. It was just the wrong exercise that we hadn't been discussing in a coaching session. So no big deal, right? Just resend it with the correct attachment. But my mind didn't see it that way. Within seconds, I was imagining what the client might be thinking. Things like, oh, Mike, he's just disorganized. Mike isn't paying attention, and maybe Mike's just not the right coach. Maybe I should just cancel the coaching contract. Now, I know all this from one small, insignificant email, insignificant mistake. But what happened? I know you're asking. Well, the truth is, they didn't even mention it. They just replied a few minutes later to the second email that I'd sent and just said, "Thanks, Mike, I'll get on with it now." But that's how the spiral works. It only takes one tiny seed for it to grow into a jungle of stress, self-doubt, and worst-case scenario thinking. And spirals are so common because our brains are wired to look for danger. It's part of our fight or flight survival instinct. The problem is, though, that it doesn't distinguish between a real threat. For example, when we were hunter-gatherers thousands of years ago, and a perceived threat. For example, sending the wrong email attachment with an email to a client today. That's why when we get triggered by embarrassment or uncertainty or fear, our brains suddenly light up with the what-if scenarios. And then before we know it, before we realize, we're rehearsing imaginary worst-case scenarios, disasters. And that's what I call the spiral. But here's the thing. Once you understand how these spirals work and notice that you could be in one, you can stop it. You can pull yourself out again, and it really doesn't take hours, it doesn't take minutes, it can be really, really quick. It just comes down to 3 short words. Firstly, when you catch yourself beginning to spiral, you need to hit the mental pause button in your mind. And all that means is noticing your thoughts and saying to yourself, hang on, this isn't helping. You can even say the actual word, pause, out loud if that helps you interrupt that mental loop. Because after all, awareness is usually the first step to change. Now, the next word is breathe. Now, I know this might sound basic, but think about it. When you're agitated, when you're about to zoom into a negativity spiral, the last thing most of us think about and remember to do is to slow down our thoughts and breathe normally. So it's not just any breathing, but what I call deliberate, focused breathing. For example, breathe in for the count of 4. Then hold that breath for a count of 4. Then when you've done that, exhale that breath for a count of 4. And then finally hold that for a count of 4. And it's important to mention that you can adapt those numbers to suit whatever numbers or lengths of time works for you and that you feel most comfortable with. But just 2 or 3 of these cycles, this slower, more deliberate breathing can calm your nervous system, slow your heart rate, and give your brain a chance to reset. Okay, now the final word, and the word is shift. And this is where you can choose a different focus. That could be asking yourself, what's the smallest next thing I can do right now? Or maybe physically moving, standing up, drinking some water, maybe stepping outside and getting some fresh air for a few minutes. Because what you're doing here is you're telling your brain, okay, we're doing something else now. And that's how you cut off the spiral before it tightens and becomes bigger than it ever needs to be. Once you've done that, it's also a good idea to perhaps change your environment. Even moving to a different room in your house or the next office can help. Just for a few minutes, maybe if you like to write, maybe write down a few of those thoughts too. Just seeing them on paper takes away some of the intensity, some of the power. After all, as Albert Einstein once said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So keep those 3 words handy, or maybe even make up your own spiral stop phrase. I've worked with people who have their own phrases, such as not now, or this isn't true yet, or even move on. I know they're all simple, but if they're meaningful for you, they just work. Also have 1 or 2 go-to activities you know will reset your mood. Personally, I like to take a quick 10-minute walk outside, listen to a piece of music, or maybe call a friend for a chat. And it's important to remember to keep that chat positive. So, next time you feel yourself spiraling, pause, breathe, shift. 3 steps that can take just a minute or 2, yet can actually save you hours of stress and mental exhaustion in your day. And if you've got your own way of stopping your spiral whenever it happens, maybe let me know. I'd love to hear how you do it, how you get out of that spiral. Maybe pop it in the comments box just below this video. And if this video has been helpful, remember to give it a like and subscribe so that more people will see it and hopefully get value from it too. And make sure you watch the next video in this series, because that's the one where we're going to be talking about something closely connected. How to reset your day even after it's had a bad start. But more of that next time. Take care.